Is blindness a barrier? No.
Is deafness a barrier? No.
Are mobility, learning, cognitive disabilities, speech impairments and others, or even a combination of them, barriers? No way. Lack of accessibility is.
Welcome to Web Accessibility for All.
Follow the blind. This journey starts now.
Hey, welcome back to Web Accessibility for All, the podcast where we explore the ins and outs of making the web more accessible for everyone. And today we are diving deep into part 2 of our series on accessible drag and drop functionality. In our last episode, we talked about the challenges disabled users face with drag and drop interactions and the importance of considering accessibility on its implementation. Alright, so today we're going to roll up our sleeves and getting into the nitty-gritty of creating an accessible drag and drop implementation from scratch. Whether you're a seasoned developer or just starting out, this episode will guide you through the process, step by step. So, let's get started. Hold on a second. The WCAG, or Web Contents Accessibility Guidelines, has rules to make drag and drop work for everyone. Let's look at those rules first.
Success Criterion 2.5.7 Dragging Movements Level AA.
This rule means that anything you do by dragging something should also be possible with just one click. If you have to drag something, there should be a good reason for it. So this rule helps people who can't drag something, like if they have trouble with their hands.
Success Criterion 2.1.1 Keyboard Level A.
You got to be able to do everything on a website just with your keyboard, even if it's something like dragging and dropping.
Success Criterion 2.1.3 Keyboard No Exception Level AAA.
This one expands on 2.1.1, requiring that all content be operable through a keyboard interface without requiring a specific timing for individual keystrokes. This criteria ensures that drag and drop interfaces are accessible to users with a wide range of abilities, providing alternative methods such as keyboard navigation and pointer interactions without the need for dragging movements. We'll make a drag and drop thing that is easy for everyone to use, even if they can't see the screen. We'll follow those rules we just talked about to make sure that works for everyone.
Setting up the HTML.
First, let's talk about the structure of our HTML. We are going to create a simple drag and drop interface with 2 draggable items and a drop zone. For screen reader users, we'll include hidden buttons to start and end the drag operation. So, let's open our Visual Studio Code.
Visual Studio Code application.
For creating our HTML page, we are going to use a nice keyboard shortcut Visual Studio Code provides, that is, by entering the bang key followed by the tab key. That will generate a basic HTML boilerplate that will be just fine for our use case today. Inside the body tag, we're going to create the following structure. The HTML will be really simple. We are not basically following any other WCAG recommendation than the ones related to drag and dropping elements. We're going to add a heading element level 1 with a proper title.
Less h1 greater accessible drag and drop less slash h1 greater.
We are going to create a div element with some area properties.
Less div. ID equals status. Aria live equals assertive. Role equals alert greater less slash div greater.
Okay, now we need a container for our draggable items. The structure is something like this.
Less div. ID equals draggable items. Aria label equals draggable items list greater.
Inside this div, we are going to add the actual draggable items. We are going to create their structure using, again, div elements with the proper area syntax for the required semantics.
Less div. ID equals item 1. Draggable equals true. Top index equals 0 greater. Item 1.
Now, let's include a button that will be visible only to screen reader users. This is because we are going to add some CSS magic to hide it from sighted users, but not for screen reader users.
Less button. Class equals SR only. OnClick equals start drag, item 1, greater. Drag element. Less slash button greater.
Now close the div element.
Less slash div greater.
And then copy and paste the element to create a second item using the same structure.
Less div. ID equals item 2. Draggable equals true. Top index equals 0 greater. Item 2. Less button. Class equals SR only. OnClick equals start drag, item 2, greater. Drag element. Less slash button greater. Less slash div greater.
Let's close the div that contains these draggable items as well.
Less slash div greater.
Now it's time to create the structure of the drop zone. The structure of this element goes like this.
Less div. ID equals drop zone. Aria dropvict equals move. Top index equals 0. Aria label equals drop zone greater. Drop zone.
Let's add an element inside this div, which will be an UL element that will serve as a simple container to place the elements after the drag operation was finished.
Less all. ID equals dropped items greater. Less slash all greater.
Okay, now to finish this, we need a button for screen readers to actually fire the drop of the element that is being dragged.
Less button. Class equals SR only. OnClick equals drop item, greater. Drop element here. Less slash button greater. Less slash div greater.
Setting up the JavaScript.
Let's move on to the JavaScript. I will explain step by step to make it easier to follow. We start by wrapping our code inside a DOM content loaded event. This ensures that our script runs only after the HTML content has fully loaded.
Document.add event listener left paren, DOM content loaded, function left paren, right paren, left brace.
Now let's define some constants to hold references to our structural components.
Const status element equals document.get element by ID, status. Const draggable items equals document.query selector all, draggable equals true. Const drop zone equals document.get element by ID, drop zone. Const dropped items list equals document.get element by ID, dropped items.
Now let's create a variable to hold another reference, in this case for the element that is being dragged.
Let dragged item equals null.
We need a function that we can use to notify the user about changes during the drag and drop operation.
Const update status message equals greater. Status element dot text content equals message.
Now we need to create handlers to manage the different events propagated.
Const handle drag start equals event equals greater. Start drag event dot target dot ID blank. Const handle drop equals event equals greater. Event dot prevent default drop item blank. Const handle drag over equals event equals greater. Event dot prevent default blank. Const handle drag end equals event equals greater. Event dot target dot set attribute aria grabbed false.
Now it's time to add the handlers to the elements.
Draggable items dot for each item equals greater. Item dot add event listener drag start handle drag start. Item dot add event listener drag end handle drag end blank. Drop zone dot add event listener drag over handle drag over. Drop zone dot add event listener drop handle drop.
Now we create a function responsible for starting the dragging operation, update the UI, and notify the change.
Function start drag item ID. Const status element equals document.get element by ID status. Dragged item equals item ID. Status element dot text content equals drag started for $dragged item dot. Document dot get element by ID item ID dot set attribute aria grabbed true blank.
Finally, let's create a function responsible for dropping the dragged element in the drop zone and add it to the list of dragged items.
Function drop item. Const status element equals document dot get element by ID status. If dragged item. Const dropped items list equals document dot get element by ID dropped items. Const list item equals document dot create element li. List item dot set attribute tab index 0. List item dot text content equals dragged item. Dropped items list dot append child list item. Status element dot text content equals element dropped in the drop zone successfully dot. Dragged item equals null. Else. Status element dot text content equals no item to drop dot.
Give it a try testing with screen readers.
Let's test our implementation on real screen readers now. For this, I will be using the most popular screen readers available for the Windows platform: JAWS, NVDA, and built-in solution for Windows, Narrator. By the way, I added some fancy audio feedback for dragging and dropping. Let's do it first with JAWS.
Heading Level 1 Accessible Drag and Drop. Item 1. Drag Element Button. Item 2. Drag Element Button. Drop Zone. Drop Element Here Button. Drag Element Button. Drag Element Button. Enter. Draggable Items List. Drag Element Button. To activate, press Enter. Drag started for Item 1. Drag Element Button. Drop Element Here Button. Enter. Drop zone, drop element here button. To activate press enter. Element dropped in the drop zone successfully. Drag element button. Enter. Draggable items list. Drag element button. To activate press enter. Drag started for item 2. Drop element here button. Enter. Drop zone. Drop element here button. To activate press enter. List end. Bullet item 2. Bullet item 1.
Then, with Windows Narrator,
Heading level 1, font Times New Roman, size 24, bold, accessible drag and drop. Alert. Item 1 drag element group, drag element, button. Font Times New Roman, size 12, background white, item 2, exit item 1 drag element group, enter item 2 drag element, button. Exit item 2 drag element group, enter drop zone group, drop element here, button. Exit drop zone group, enter item, exit item 2 drag element group, enter item 1 drag element group, drag started for item 1, control. Exit item 1 drag element group, exit item 2 drag element group, enter drop zone group, drop element here, button. Element dropped in the drop zone successfully. Shift, exit drop zone group, enter item 2 drag element group, drag element, button. Drag started for item 2. Exit item 2 drag element group, enter drop zone group, drop element here, button. Element dropped in the drop zone successfully. Enter list, 2 of 2 level 1, heading level 1, bulleted list, round bullets, font Times New Roman, size 12, background light gray, bullet, item 2. 1 of 2 level 1, heading level 1, bullet, item 1.
and finally, my screen reader of choice, NVDA.
Heading level 1 accessible drag and drop. Item 1. Drag element button. Item 2. Button drag element. Drop zone. Button drop element here. Drag element button. Drag element button. Drag started for item 1. Drag element button, drop element here button. Element dropped in the drop zone successfully. Drag element button. Drag started for item 2. Drop element here button. Element dropped in the drop zone successfully. List with 2 items bullet item 2. Bullet item 1.
And there we have it. We have built an accessible drag and drop implementation from scratch. Sighted users can drag and drop using their mouse, while screen reader users can perform the same action using buttons. This ensures a seamless and inclusive experience for all users. By the way, I have included a link to the GitHub repository in this episode description. So if you encounter any difficulties following the tutorial, please feel free to take a look and fork and create your own implementation. Contributions and feedback are very welcomed. It's important to note that this is a proof of concept implementation and is not by any means intended as a complete solution for drag and drop on production environments. That's it for today, my friend. Thank you very much for tuning into Web Accessibility for All. I really hope that you have found this series helpful and are inspired now to make your web applications more accessible. Until next time, keep advocating for web accessibility. See you in the next episode, my friend. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Subscribe for a new challenge next week. And don't be shy. Leave us a review or ask your accessibility questions online. See you next week for another episode of Web Accessibility for All.